Here we Woo! The tailgate continues, the final day. Ashley, what's going on?
I am so ready. I am so excited. I'm so excited to be talking to Shannon. I love this woman. She's amazing.
Ooh, there we go. Shannon, welcome to the tailgate. Are you ready to have some fun?
I am. So thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing Ashley again and just meeting so many new people and seeing old friends and just having a great time. It's going to be a really great event.
Okay, so before we even start, you said, do I know somebody in Pittsburgh?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so here we go. I used to be a branch manager at TRUE. BLUE.
Oh my gosh.
And guess who hired me?
Milena.
You got it.
Oh my gosh.
At Panera Bread. She interviewed me at Panera Bread and hired me on the spot.
Wow.
Back in 2016.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh. She's one of the best in the business, and she's such a great leader, and she's a dear friend of mine. We see each other a few times a year. I'm on the West Coast. She's in Pittsburgh, but we all connect. So isn't that fabulous? Oh my
Small
gosh.
world.
I had no idea.
And Shannon, I got to tell you, we should have a series just on True Blue and day-to-day labor. I can give you stories that people would go, OMG.
OMG is right. I mean, when I joined True Blue and heard some of the stories from the folks that have been there for many, many, many years. I mean, we'll tell stories because it is laugh out loud funny. Some of them.
I don't know how many people I had in my car at one time with knives in their pockets and other stuff. And it's like, I'm driving them in my car. It's like, they could have done anything to me, you know? One guy had a gun. I'm like, I'm carrying him, dropping him off home. It's like,
yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
It's a crazy business, but an amazing culture too. It really was. And you get people like Milena that are just big hearts, big caring hearts. So that's amazing that you were.
There it is. We got something to talk about at the Staffing Sales Summit, the True Blue stories. Look out.
We sure do.
Well, hey, Shannon, thank you so much. I am so pumped about your presentation next week, me and Ashley, as developing top sales producers. So just give us a little teaser of what you're going to talk about next week.
Yeah. So, as I talk to folks in the industry, there are kind of four key questions that we'll address that I hear over and over again. It's like, how do I hold my producers accountable? I don't want to seem like I'm micromanaging, but how do I hold them accountable for results? And so we'll talk a little bit about that and what's behind that and how to make sure that you are giving them the support they need, the coaching they need, and giving them direction and clarity. But you can't find yourself a year or two down the road and they haven't really done much for you. That it's too much of an expense. You just can't do that. So setting them up for success is one of the things we'll talk about. And then the other thing is holding leaders accountable for the producers.
Yes.
And that's really what the key focus is how do I know whether someone is the right person to be in a leadership role? How do I set them up so they can manage their teams effectively and choose the right producers? Again, get them the training and then ongoing coaching. I hear this from time to time. People say, well, if I just send them through training, then they'll just go out and do it, right? No, there's this repetition that needs to happen. It's that you're going to feel like a broken record, but you've got to repeat, and practice. So we'll talk a lot about that too, and make sure your leaders are set up for success. And if you're going to transition someone who's a top producer into a leadership role, be careful because that's their career. And if they're the right person, set them up to move into that role over time and make sure that they really want that for the right reasons. Because some of them would just be happier being in a top producer role and make more money doing it. And I've seen it happen, Richard, and it breaks my heart when we move people from a position where they're successful and they're a great salesperson, then we make them a leader, then they fail.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's really hard for them to come back from that. And that's our job as leaders to make sure that they're ready. they're really ready to move into that leadership role. And they're not doing it just because they think that's what they're supposed to do, but they really truly feel this calling and this need to want to help other people be successful and look at their success through others, not through themselves. So, when do you know if somebody's ready, number one, or that really is their calling versus just they think that needs to be. And then we'll talk a little bit about incentives. And I'm a big believer incentives do drive behavior. So you've got to make sure your incentives align with where you're going as an organization. You have to, right? And if you're going to change incentives, you're going to change people's behavior. So really think through what that is going to entail. Because I always like the phrase, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's physics.
Ooh, I like that.
But it's true. So if I switch my incentives because I don't like what's happening over here, then guess what? You're going to have downstream effect over here. And it just as long as you're thinking that through and you are mitigating any unintended consequences, then you can move forward with that. But it's really important to think that through and keep them simple. If people can't understand how to calculate their incentives and what they're going to get paid, they get really confused and they start to lose trust. So those are 4 key areas that we're going to really dive into and talk about.
All right, Ash got a question for you. Go ahead, Ash.
Oh, I love this topic and I love those pillars because not only does it apply to sales, it applies to recruiters too. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen it 100 times where, someone's a really, really great recruiter and then they become a manager of some sort. And it's like, why did you just move your top producer into a role where they're not producing? So it's a fine line. Leadership takes a different set of skills, and it doesn't mean just being a really good salesperson or a really good recruiter. So absolutely. Really excited to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And I think I think it's particularly difficult if you move people from a producer in a team and then move them to a leadership role over that same team, because the dynamics of the relationship change.
Mm-hmm. People start resenting each other.
Or they're uncomfortable having uncomfortable conversations with people that were their peers and their friends maybe. So that becomes, and I'll tell the story when I get there, not to do it now, about a personal story for me that really hit home when I transitioned to my first leadership role over the same team that I worked with day in and day out. So I think those are really, you got to be really thoughtful about that transition and because suddenly the dynamic changes. It's a different dynamic and really challenging for the people that are reporting to you. Now, who are you now? Do I trust you anymore? Can I share my vulnerability with you anymore? And then again, those uncomfortable conversations that have to happen sometimes, they're reluctant to do that.
You hit it on the head. What I like, and I got to ask you this. So you see managers there. Should they be transparent? I always believe in this transparency stuff like that. A hands-on manager is probably one of the best managers you could ever have. What's your take on all that?
You do. You have to be transparent, but you also have to be consistent in your feedback. If you suddenly, months down the road, I'm going to be honest with you now, and then it's like, whoa, you just hit me with a truck. I didn't know that I was deficient in these, and all of a sudden you're going to throw it on me. So I think there's just this cadence and setting this stage and then expectation that we're going to have these honest conversations, and we're going to talk about, what's going well and what's not going well and how we can help you with that. That's the coaching of behaviors, because that's really typically where the challenge lies. And because you can teach people new skills, but if they don't adopt new behaviors, then they may not be successful. So yes, that transparency in a very kind, tactful way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also lays the foundation for if it doesn't work out and it's not a good fit, that we've got a kind of a basis of trust and open transparency and how we can move you back into a role where you are going to be successful. And so starting that conversation out with, if you want to move into a leadership role, here's the things we need to look out for. Here's the things that, you can look at it from the outside and say, yeah, I'm going to love it. I'm going to love all these different aspects of the job. And you get in there and they go, whoa, it's not what I thought it was going to be. Opening the door in the beginning to have those conversations along the way to where they can go back to a role that they are successful in a very dignified way and a mutually agreeable way.
So it's almost like you said, like a probation period. I think sometimes, you got 30 days, try it out. If you're a manager, if it doesn't work, you can go back into being a producer.
Yes, exactly. And that gives everybody the opening to say, okay, maybe it's not what I thought it was going to be. And then I've seen that people go back into an individual contributor role, and they make more money than the manager, and they're less headaches, and all of those things. And I think as an organization too, most organizations, they put too much emphasis on leadership as versus individual contributors. So a lot of what they're looking for is just recognition that they have value and that they bring something to the organization and they contribute something to the organization that's really important, and not just that they're paid accordingly, but they're recognized as a valuable member of the team based on what their contribution is. And let me tell you, hunters are hard to find.
They are. Everybody wants to be an account manager. Anybody can manage an account.
That hunter skill is a really unique skill. So when you find one, nurture
Be a shark.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, go after it. But yeah, for
sure. What do you think, Ash?
No, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, I am also interested in, and we can talk about this next week too, but I've seen some success in putting leaders sort of like the probationary period, but also more just like a split desk. Like you're still producing, you're still responsible for like just really big accounts or something. And then you have a smaller team, and that could be a way to sort of test the.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's, it's a double-edged sword there, because if you then tell somebody, and this is where companies that are in this tweener mode, I would tell you, is that they've got some salespeople, the lead, the CEO is like, I'm not having difficult time really giving them the time they need and leader, but I'm not quite ready for a full-time leader. That's a really difficult period of transition as an organization and your growth trajectory. But on the other hand, if you put somebody in a position where you're responsible for a quota or building your own business, and we want you to lead this team, then they have kind of a split. They're really trying to figure out where do I put my effort and energy. And if I'm focused on building my own business, am I neglecting my team? Mm-hmm. And when leads come in, do I have a bias towards giving them to the team or taking them for myself? So there's kind of this challenge for those leaders to be both there for the team and there for themselves. So I think that there's a cautionary tale, but there are other ways to give people a kind of a snapshot of what it's going to be like. You can say, all new people, we're going to have you mentor them. We're going to have you spend time with them. We're going to have you coach them. We're going to have you facilitate a meeting where you're training on a particular subject, so you get a chance to be that voice of the expert for the rest of the team. So things like that. And then they get a chance to see themselves as, it's not about me anymore. It's about everybody else.
Yes.
And that's the mental part that not everybody flips to, right? And so that's where they get the chance to see, am I excited when somebody else wins on the team?
Yeah, of course.
More excited than when I win. And if that's not the case, then you got to ask yourself, is this really where I want to be? Is this really what I want to do?
That is so perfect. I got to tell you one story real quick, Shannon. This is funny, but I tell anybody, if you're a selling branch manager, like we were at True Blue, that is the ultimate. If you can multitask all that, that is stress, Ashley. When you run the office and then you got to go out and sell too, and you got to get your numbers in a month, that's a multitask job there.
Yes, it is. And that selling branch manager is a great model for a lot of businesses. So it really, you have to think about what your segment you're in, what sector you're going after, what type of structure you have. So there's no one size fits all, basically. And I think you have to adapt to your organization. Also culturally, if there's high pressure on producing and you want me in a leadership role, then I'm going to be conflicted. So there's a lot of those nuanced things to think about in an organization to make sure that person can transition into, if this is a temporary transition into leadership, and then the goal is for me to be in a full-time leadership role. then align the incentives quarterly as well, so that they know what they're going to be graded on, if you will, and what their performance is measured on, and so that they can really focus on the right things that get them from this dual role to this full-time leadership role.
100%. I tell people there's so many stories there. You're hiring, you're firing, you're making sure the recruiters are happy, and you're trying to sell and keep your branch alive. It's I tell anybody, it's like a boot camp. It's if you can do that, I'll be honest with you, Shannon, I think you could handle anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I am a big fan of the branch model in certain types of organizations. But, as you know, we're moving away from this branch-based business to these remote environments and remote teams, and a lot of, technology behind it, both in recruiting and in sales. So that it's kind of it's like you don't have the geographic territories the same way you used to. But conceptually, I think that branch model works really well for certain types of businesses. Absolutely.
I love it. One last thing before we get in some fun here. Insights for 25. What are you seeing sales reps, maybe a couple teasers or tips on what they need to do in 25? I mean, AI is coming at us. What's your take?
So one of the biggest challenges is that their AI tools are becoming very sophisticated. They're very sophisticated on the buyer side too. So they can unsubscribe to your emails like that. They get flooded. So you're just this little tiny, speck of sand in this, if you will, in this, ocean of all of the different emails that get thrown at them. So it's really difficult to stand out. So a couple of things. One would be take time to look at who your targets are and have a personalized approach. If the recipient can tell you did the research and you're speaking directly to them and not to a wide audience that is clearly generic and has nothing to do with them, you have a much higher chance of having engagement and having a response and building in that relationship. So that's one. I think also really people are, they'd like to make connections. And so depending on what industry you're in, start to build connections within that industry through association events and just where can you learn about the industries you serve and that your clients are in. And sometimes you think, well, that connection isn't somebody who's going to be able to use our services. Perhaps not, but they're going to introduce you to other people who can. And you start to understand their business better. There's one quote that Korn Ferry did research years ago on what is it that's important to customers when they're dealing with a salesperson. Know my business. Know my business. And then what's the biggest thing that irritates buyers from a salesperson? When they don't know my business.
100%. Yes. Do the research.
Do the research, understand the community you serve, understand the businesses you serve, talk to those pain points that they're experiencing. So I think what I do see often happening is that leaders and organizations look at activity and high activity as being a measure of success. And that can't be your yardstick. You really need to be looking at how many people am I engaging with, and whether they respond to email in a more meaningful way. So you have some sort of meaningful exchange there. That might be top of the funnel, way at the top of the funnel, but that's the start of that relationship that comes down into the funnel. And we hear over and over again, the buyer journey has changed, right? Buyers are going to do that.
Yeah.
They're going to talk to their peers. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look at your LinkedIn, and then maybe they want to talk to you. But when they get to that point of talking to you, over 50% of the decision on whether to buy has to do with the interaction with the salesperson at that point in time.
Yes, 100%. You hit it.
Statistically, that is it. So make sure your salespeople are prepared for that interaction because you won't get another chance.
Right.
A one shot, like Eminem says, you got one shot, Shannon.
I love it. Exactly. And make sure that they are ready for that meeting because it can happen anytime. That's where that practice comes into play of, okay, when you get that opportunity, someone responds, they're ready to engage. How do you start that conversation? Where do you take that conversation? What questions are you going to ask? How do you present what your organization does and how they can help that customer, and tie those two together? Tying what you do and what our organization does with what that customer's needs are, making that connection for them. And so I think those are things that are really important for today. Because boy, if you get in front of somebody, they're probably ready to buy, but your interactions with them are going to have a lot to do with whether they decide to go with your organization or someone else.
Man,
Don't mess
you
up.
I love it. You know what I always say when I go into a sales meeting real quick, and then we'll jump into it, is it's like showtime. Like I always say, Kenny Chesney, you're on stage. It's time for you to perform. It's not going in like slouching and stuff like that. It's like, it's showtime. Bring the energy, or I call it valuetainment. Bring it.
You don't think, and they don't go on stage without practicing.
Exactly.
They've been doing it for 30, 40 years, but they still practice before they go on stage.
Testing 1 2, testing 1 2 with Shannon.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon, you ready for some fun here? Here we go. Ashley, you going to ask her the question?
Uh-oh.
It's an easy one. It's an easy one. So we're going to Margaritaville, and the shark wants to know, what's your favorite Jimmy Buffett song?
Oh, you know what? I have to confess, I love music. I love that kind of music. I would be the worst player in music trivia because I couldn't tell you, probably Margaritaville, but I love Jimmy Buffett.
It's a vibe. He's a vibe. We know we like it, but pinpointing a specific song can be hard.
Ask me to name the song. I'm like last place on that game. So I'll just tell you, I think he's amazing. I love his music. I love the vibe of it. I love the feel of it. So he's awesome.
Okay, Shannon. So I got to warn you this. Margaritaville is your song. 7 o'clock in the morning through the hotel, Jimmy Buffett's playing all day at 7 a.m. So it's like you just get up and you out your door and there it is. The music's just jamming.
Oh, that's just going to bring a smile to my face and everybody else.
And then guess what you're getting when you get there? Shark's going to have some of these. You ready for one?
Ready. I'll take it. So what color am I get so I can be color coordinated?
You know what? I'm going to buy variety packs. I don't know. So just come vibrant and I'll have something for you.
Sounds good. That sounds good. Great.
I love it. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor here. Nationwide Screening Services. You need background checks, drug tests, or anything else. Call Nationwide Screening Services. They got your businesses back. There we go. Just like that, Boom. Hey, Shannon, thank you so much for coming. But before we go, there's something else. Where are you going to be Thursday at 5 o'clock?
Thursday at 5 o'clock?
Yes, next week. Where will you be?
I will be in Margaritaville. But
you better attend the networking mixer hosted by the one and only Shark.
I will be there.
Ashley will be there too.
I will be there. I will be there for sure. And excited to meet you in person. Ashley, see you again. And again, lots of familiar faces. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I really want to thank Dan Morey too, because nobody has ever put together an event like this that is focused solely on sales in the staffing industry, and it's much needed. So. And it's exciting that this is only second year and it's grown. I believe it's going to continue to grow.
I love it.
Absolutely.
All right, fellas, we'll see you next week, ladies, in Margaritaville. That's a wrap. See ya.